Hey everybody, welcome back to the LuckyDog podcast. This is your host, Elias Roush. This podcast is sponsored by EliasRoushMedia.com, photo, video, digital media production. Just wanted to give a quick disclosure at the very beginning of this podcast that anything that I do or say or try to pronounce, places, names, events, that type of thing, it's probably going to be a little bit wrong just because I have no idea how to speak Chinese of any kind, and most of the names I will not be able to pronounce correctly. So I just want to give that a slight disclosure up front. And I mean anything that I say with the Ip Man movie reviews with the most respect. So anything that I get wrong with that, please forgive me on that end. Anyways. Let's continue on. Ip Man 2008. Let me just say, from understanding what Ip Man was, I thought it was, from coming from a Western culture, Ip Man sounds very foreign, not knowing what I'm talking in, what even I'm looking at, what I would be talking about. Just looking at the poster, not knowing, it just looks like Donnie Yen looking like he's about to whoop. Netflix has done an excellent job curating itself. At least the United States Netflix has done an excellent job curating itself around some very well-known IP. IP. When I not just Ip Man series, but property that has to do with Asian and Japanese and other more foreign, lesser known martial arts films. And this is one of the Chinese martial arts films that I have found on Netflix, mostly because I saw Enter the Dragon with Bruce Lee. It was the first movie I've seen Bruce Lee really act in, and I had a wonderful time, enough that I wanted to continue watching more martial arts films and kind of understanding about it. And I had absolutely no idea that Ip Man was based on the actual guy back in the day. Ip Man was actually a real guy, born back in 1893. He was a Chinese martial artist and a grandmaster of the martial art Wing Chun. And so he was so good that he essentially became like like it says, the grandmaster, enough where they were like, all right, so we got to have a movie about the guy that trained. This is sort of, I'll wait till the end of the movie to mention the major names of people that he's trained. But because I watched Enter the Dragon, Ip Man just naturally popped up into the feed, and I was like, oh wow. So I had heard of Donnie Yen. I had seen him in a couple of Western movies. The Rogue One movie, I believe, has Donnie Yen in it, and I know that's like the most generic blockbustery ass Star Wars movie you could have probably mentioned. I know that, but I had heard that he was a badass, and I had never really seen anything he was in. So I decided to watch it after seeing maybe like a 30-second clip on Netflix. They automatically play the trailers as you are kind of scrolling over the movies. So I was like, I'm just going to continue the Bruce Lee / action martial arts flicks and just continue on. And I decided to watch Ip Man, and HT from Slash Film had talked about Ip Man, and I had not really understood what the hype was about. And after watching it, I understand now. I mean, when I kind of equate it to like when you see something being done on screen that you want to either be a part of the culture or, learn more about the culture, or at least continue watching the movies about the culture. The first Ip Man does that. Just as, I know this is kind of an apples to oranges kind of thing, but Ip Man makes me want to learn about martial arts, as in does the Fast and Furious first movie, does it make me want to drive fast cars? It's kind of in the same realm, and I think it does its job well when trying to kind of convey that culture and understanding of the martial arts. So the Ip Man film is a 2008 Hong Kong biographical martial arts film based on the life of Ip Man, a grandmaster of the martial arts Wing Chun and teacher of, I'm going to save it till the end of the movie because um, they don't they don't mention it till the end of the movie, so I want to really hold back who he has taught. Okay, so the film focuses on the events of Ip's life that supposedly took place in the city of Foshan during the Sino-Japanese War. The film was directed by Wilson Yip and stars Donnie Yen as Ip Man, with martial arts choreography by Sammo Hung. I believe. Oh yeah. So okay. So from Sammo Hung. The supporting cast. All right. This is gonna be a butcher. I'm sorry. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to do it with as much. I'm gonna do it with 100% respect, but I'm not gonna promise that I'm gonna be able to say these correct. So the cast includes Simon Yam, Lin Hung, Lam Kat Tung, Xing Yu, Hiroki Irachi, and Tenma Shibuya. It is a co-production between China and Hong Kong, and it is the last film to be distributed by Mandarin Films. I'm kind of in the dark about who Mandarin Films is. It must be like a Chinese production company of some sort, or one of the two. So Ip Man is the first film in the Ip Man film series. It premiered in Beijing on December 10th, 2008, and was released theatrically in Hong Kong on the 19th of the same year. Receiving widespread acclaim from critics and audiences before the film's released, Raymond Wong announced that there would be a sequel, a second installment titled Ip Man 2, to be released April 2010. So it sounds like very early into the making of Ip Man 1, they knew that they were going to have Ip Man 2. They knew they might have had a hit on their hands. Ip Man 1 grossed over $21 million worldwide, despite not being released in North America and most of Europe. Following its success, the film was nominated for 12 Hong Kong Film Awards, winning awards for Best Film and Best Action Choreography. And I gotta say, the action in this first movie is extremely impressive. Like many, basically non-Western movies, think Korean, think Japanese, think Chinese, think pretty much any place that has really fast action. They are so much faster at what they are doing. It looks like people are actually getting hit. People look like they are getting hit for our entertainment. Like, is that guy okay? Is what I'm thinking about 90% of the time when these action scenes are happening. So, continuing on. This movie is 108 minutes. What is that? About 2 hours and 40 minutes or something like that. Let me see. Why don't I know? In hours. Why can't I think about what the... Yeah, hour 45. Sorry, I was trying to get the budget up too. So the budget is excuse me, 11 million on for this, with a $21 million return. It's not exactly a lot. I guess if they would have shot it, kind of close with Ip Man 2, and they probably... I tell you what the problem was. They didn't release it worldwide, or they didn't release it to North America and Europe. That was the problem. And so they're probably getting more money now for it. So director Wilson Yip, produced by Raymond Wong, written by Edmund Wong, Chan Ta Lee, Um, and I think John Ta Lee, was he one of the last disciples of? No, I don't think he was. No, he's too young. No, I thought he was one of the last guys that got trained by the original Ip Man. I don't think it is. Um, so yeah, we have the plot coming up real quick, and this is where we're gonna have to leave the people that have not seen Ip Man 1, and some of the Patreon members are going to get this early. Some are gonna get this fast, and the non-edited version is on patreon.com/LuckyDog Podcast. Thank you for watching, listening, Lucky Dog Podcast, and supporting the Lucky Dog Podcast. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, please email email luckydogpodcast@gmail.com. Check out all the social medias and the links below, and on the descriptions you get Twitch live, you get the YouTubes, you get the SoundCloud's mastered, Patreon, you'll get it the full podcast early, and you'll get it in full non-edited review. So thank you for listening, watching Look At All Podcast. Let me know what you thought about Ip Man 1, and here is the plot of Ip Man 1. Oh, hold on. Before we go into the plot real quick, I meant to mention, I like to do pros and cons before we hop into it. The score, that dun 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 dun, that is that's a hype in an original score, and I gotta say I really enjoyed it. To the point where I've already watched the second Ip Man, and I want it more in that second one. I enjoyed it that much that I wanted it in that second one more. So cast. The casting, like I said, I think the majority of the cast in the first movie does really great job. Antagonists are antagonists, a little bit hammy, but not too bad. I'd say the action, obviously, it's some of the best you've ever seen. Looks like people actually are getting hurt. The story's a lot stronger in the first movie. I'm trying not to compare it too much to the second one, because just for the sake of not talking about too much. But the first one feels like a complete story, as if they might not have any more Ip Mans after. If you didn't want to watch the other ones, I think that you would be okay just watching this first one. And if you watch the first one, I think you're going to want more Ip Man in it in your life, so you're going to want to watch the sequels as well. The pacing in the first one works really well. It does a fantastic job of establishing who he is, the world he's living in, the kind of the diplomatic bureaucracy he's having to deal with, if that's what you want to call it. It's not very bureaucratic at all. It's slightly over dramatic in some of the non-action scenes. I will say it's a little bit hammy with that, but not too bad. The way that the women treat the men in these movies does have the irking and the feeling of everything is like catered toward the man, and I know that there is from the way that we have films in Western cultures versus like American films versus like Bollywood films versus like films that are in like based in Korean and based in northern places in like Europe. All these different places are going to have different types of politics when it gears towards how we treat each other from like a gender bias. And I definitely feel like there's I understand that the movie Ip Man 1 is taking place in 1935, and so the times were different, but this doesn't mean that the way that we have to write the characters had to be any different. So I do feel like it was a little bit underwritten with the women's treatment in the first one, but we do kind of get a little bit of insight. It's kind of like the wife that's always annoyed that the man has to work, kind of thing. It's like, what do you want him to do? So they write the women in a position of like, you almost end up just insulting them by default unnecessarily. So anyways, sorry, I meant to say all that before we got into the plot, but here we go for the plot of Ip Man 1. In 1935, Foshan is a hub of Southern Chinese martial arts, where various schools actively recruit disciples and compete against each other. Although the Wing Chun master, Ip Man, is the most skilled martial artist in Foshan, he is unassuming and maintains a low profile. He also smokes, by the way. I gotta say, he's a very chill guy. He doesn't like to brag about being a badass. Um, he is he is respected by other masters for the humbleness he displays in friendly closed door competitions. So, like, at the beginning of this thing, he just has people just showing up at his door like, yo, and trying to throw one of these, one of those, one of these, just casually in between him doing his chores. He's just like folding clothes or, just practicing some of his martial arts. And then somebody will show up at his door and be like, ah, yeah! It's just like out of the blue. I was just like, yeah, I would be, if people were just coming up and trying to challenge you all damn day, I'd be like, all right, that's $100, $100, $100, $100, $100. And, everybody going to be paying to get some of this because I know everybody wants some of this ass whooping right here. And any of these I do during the podcast, this is only with respect. I only wish I could give one of these like Ip Man could. I mean, he literally is chopping, dicing, slicing like half of his enemies, and I'd say a quarter of the time he could have done like a straight up death blow to the individual, to the point where it's like he's holding back half the time. He's so good and he's so fast. I feel like they didn't even have a camera that could shoot fast enough to how fast he was. I was blown away. So this was my feeling of the first little bit of Ip Man. And so one day a troublemaker named Jan, I believe it's Jan, tries to rescue his kite from Ip Man's tree and witnesses Ip defeat fellow master Lu in a friendly sparring match. Jan spreads the news all over Foshan. His brother Lin, a disciple master of Lu, pulls his pants down in public to show Jan that some secrets need to be kept private. Embarrassed, Jan disappears into the crowd. And so Jin Shan Hao is a rude, highly skilled northern Chinese martial arts master. Challenges all the masters in Foshan to duels, which he easily wins. Ip's reputation is further enhanced when he defeats Jin, thus upholding the regional pride of fellow southern stylists and others in Foshan. The young men in Foshan beg Ip to take them as disciples, but Ip turns them down. So there's this whole setup with Ip Man basically taking down one of the masters in his town and in Foshan, and it's almost like, if anyone's ever seen Cobra Kai, how there's like gangs of people that everyone is just part of this like different type of, everyone wants to kind of like gang up and be their own martial arts community kind of thing. And when they start kind of seeing how Ip is part of, he is this badass, everybody wants to fight him. And so when the reputation of, when the reputation of Master Lao gets revealed that Ip Man defeated him, it's like this big blow to his ego. And so, Ip Man he's the big man. He has to say, oh, it's no big deal, no big deal, no big deal. And so he's trying to, kind of give off that vibe. And I gotta say, all of the martial arts through all of this first beginning, even when Jin is introduced and he's kind of bullying everybody, trying to just challenge everybody he goes into town with. He's literally just beating up people through the town. He's like taking down each of the masters in each of the sections. All of that action, I think, is done a lot is done really well. And just kind of a side note, I think most of the action in this first hour, I want to say, is a little bit better than what's going on in Ip Man 2. Just kind of a side note, just for that. During the second during the Second Sino-Japanese War, the Imperial Japanese Army confiscates Ip's house and repurposes it into their Foshan military headquarters. Ip and his family lose their wealth and are forced to move into a decrepit apartment. Desperate to support his family. Oh, yeah, I do got to say that Ip's living pretty good. I got to say the original place that he was living, I mean, it looked like, high-ass ceilings, nice-ass art, cool-ass paint. I don't remember if there's paintings, but, I mean, it's just a nice-ass, fly-ass house. And so they're forced to move into a decrepit apartment. Desperate to support his family, Ip finds work at a coal mine alongside Lin. Lin regrets humiliating Juan, but his efforts to find his brother and gift him a small metal tin have proved futile. So, yeah, it is pretty fucked up. I mean, it's a kind of a quick brush to the side of, by the way, it's the second Japanese war, and he's working for the coal mines, and all this terrible shit's happened. It's like, wait, wow! It's like so much shit gets like pushed. It's some of it is told in just like a few captions, I believe. It feels like it maybe could have been a narration, but sometimes narrations can be a little bit hammy. But there's a lot of information that is just like recited or given in caption. But by the way, a bunch of terrible shit happened to him. It's like, oh my god, that's terrible. And so, there's this whole section with the army, the Imperial Japanese Army, and I gotta say, even through Ip Man 2, there is a lot of friction with how being disrespected in China feels like the epitome of that's it. It's like you got to take somebody out if somebody does that. It's the epitome of in America, maybe don't call us chicken kind of thing, don't call us a coward or something, that I guess it's kind of that line, but sometimes it takes it into, their ego. You gotta watch out. The ego ends up taking you out. And so, what else do we got? Desperate to support his family, Ip finds work at a coal mine alongside Lin. Lin regrets humiliating Yan, and he couldn't find the small tin. Give the tin to his brother. General Mariah, a Japanese karate master, establishes an arena where Chinese martial arts compete with his military trainees for the prize of a bag of rice, which is, I think, is extremely insulting to, I guess, the people that are, fighting. It's like you're going to fight for basically your life, and the only thing you're going to win is what you were originally working to have anyway. It's like, good God, it's kind of rough in this environment, to say the least. Li Zhao, a former police officer who was trying to play detective hard-ass or police hard-ass in the first half of the movie, and he is just always, he's always shaking his fist like, don't you be doing this, Donnie Yen. And so a former police officer and Ip's acquaintance, kind of acquaintance. He's trying to be buddy with this guy, mostly because he's, a police officer. He doesn't want to get, beat up or anything like that when you live over there. I would not want to be captured by these people. So the former police officer Li Zhao now works as an interpreter for the Japanese army. He offers the martial arts working. He offers the martial arts working sorry, the martial artists working at the coal mine the chance to earn a bag of rice, depending on the numbers of Japanese karate fighters they defeat. Lin disappears shortly after his fight, and Lin literally he's trying to whoop the general's ass, General Mariah's ass. I gotta say, the politics of them being able to find the only black guy, what appeared to be he appeared to be the only black guy that was leading the Japanese army. I had so many questions. Is this what this guy used to look like? I wonder if he was a darker skinned guy. I mean, but from what he looked like, I know the color filters might have been a little bit different, but this dude looked like he was probably a black guy, and he was running the Japanese martial arts, um, army camp thing going on. And I was just like, what is going on? I have like more than one question. But anyways, this general is a badass. And so this general, unfortunately, hits him with a ha, ha, and then a foot. I can't get my foot up, but he was like, ha, an elbow right now is going to be a foot. He said, ha, and then Lance like, skuh, skuh, skuh. And I was like, oh my gosh, they did skuh Lynn's neck. And so Lynn disappears. I thought Lynn was good. He was always like, "What's up, Ip Man?" He was always a cool dude, except for pulling his brother's pants down. I mean, he was always trying to do some good for what was going on. But anyways, I was like, "Oh my gosh, they fucking skunked Lynn." So shortly after his fight, Ip Man agrees to participate in order to find out what happened to his friend. Ip watches Master Lao defeat one of General Mariah's karatekia. What is a karatekia? Can you tell me what this means? Can someone tell me what this means? Testing. Okay, I guess I have no idea what that means, and neither does Wikipedia. Anyways, Master Lo defeat one of Mariah's katakuriya. Lu then requests to fight 3 at once for one more bag of rice. Then, though he loses the match, when Lao attempts to collect his winning bag of rice from the first match, General Mariah's second in command, Colonial Sato, shoots and kills him. And so I just want to be clear that this was I was a little bit sometimes the names get me a little bit confused, but essentially the guy that Ip Man was fighting at the beginning of the movie, Master Lao, is fighting all of the general's guys, and he's like, you can't fucking fuck with me. I'm a fucking badass. Psh, 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 psh. And he fucks all the guys up. He's like, give me all the rice. I'm out of here. And then he's getting ready to grab the rice, and then he gets shot by Sato, Colonel Sato, and he kills him. General Mariah points Sato's own gun at his head and threatens to personally execute him if he ever fires in the dojo again. He is so pissed that Sato took out this guy, because I think he admires the Chinese, even though they really seem to hate them, just because they are on the quote unquote other side, or they're not on the Japanese side. But I think he admires a good fighter, and so when Sato did this, it was just extremely disrespectful to everybody, and Ip Man at this point is just like, that's it. After witnessing Lao's execution, Ip deduces that Lee was beaten and killed after his earlier fight against General Mariah. Enraged, Ip demands a fight with 10 Kateria at once. And I know I'm saying that wrong, but I'm just going to keep saying it. The Kateria are the guys that are outside the ring that are basically his little minions, and they all get in position. They're like, or one of these, or I don't know. They all get in a position where it's like I wouldn't want to be in the circle of that. I wouldn't want to be on either side of that because it just looks like a bunch of people that are going to go yeah. And so, despite having not practiced Wing Chun since the Japanese occupied Foshan, Ip Man mercilessly defeats them all, showing none of them restraint he exhibited in earlier matches with other masters. He takes each one of these guys, ha 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 ha. Like if this microphone was those guys, he would hit him with a neck chop, and then with one of these, and one of those, and a koken. I did. I was in karate for 3 years, and I got my black belt probably over 15 years ago. So I remember about zero of the karate I've learned, but I was a black belt at one time. And I got to say, if you don't continuously keep it up, then you're going to forget what you're doing. So sometimes you just got to hit him with one of these and one of those and karate chop and call it a day. And so anyways, Ip Man was going so fucking badass. I mean, hit him with these, foot. And so, anyways, he shows no restraint, and just this guy going with no restraint is just fucking badass. His skill arouses the interest of General Mariah, who wants to learn more about Ip and watch him fight again. Ip collects Lou's bag of rice and gives it to his surviving family. This was kind of nasty. I just got to say that Ip should have got a clean bag of rice because it had Ip's blood in the rice. Are they going to cook that bloody rice right there? Like, what's going on with that? That's not safe for the baby. I saw the kid in there. Don't be giving them this nasty rice. You won like 20 bags of clean rice and you gave them the dirty rice. I saw that shit. Oh my goodness. So anyways, I think they thought it meant more symbolism than not, but just give him some fresh rice. So Ip visits his friend Chao Ching Chun, and I'm sorry if this sounds, terrible, or if I'm saying it wrong. I don't mean it in a derogatory way, my lord. That's literally the dude's name. Who owns and runs a cotton mill in Foshan. One day, Chao's son rushes to Ip and tells him that a bandit gang led by Jin is harassing the workers and trying to extort money from them. Ip finally agrees to teach the others and train the workers in Wing Chun for self-defense. And this was a little bit hammy. This is where it was a little bit goofy. This is the part I don't know if you could just teach all these people, how to defend themselves. Ideally, that would be a great idea. But some of them are, of different ages. Some of them are in different shapes of health. Honestly, I was watching this and I was like, oh my gosh, this is setting up for failure. Everyone's gonna get their ass beaten. It looks really bad, and so I was really worried when all this was happening because of how, I guess, easy everyone's like dun, 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 like trying to do the moves and stuff like that, and I was just like, I'm worried for like 30 of y'all, and the other 10 of y'all are good because you're gonna have like weapons in your hands, hopefully. But I was just surprised that the extent of everyone just does martial arts. No one uses guns or anything like that, and I understand of why you have to do that, because you can know if someone just rolls up with a gun, it's just like it's game over, really, unless they're like close combat and they're removed from it. So I can understand why it's you have to stay within the rules of what's going on, but still you got to be like anyways, that would have been funny if Ip Man just comes to the Wing Chun and just gives everybody like a 9mm. It's like, here's one for you, here's one for you, here's one for the kids. It's like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So when Ip does not return to the arena, General Mariah grows impatient and sends Sato along with several soldiers to track Ip down. After overpowering them single-handedly, Ip and his family flee their apartment and hide in Master, in Lee's house. When the bandits return to the cotton mill, the workers are able to fight and stall them long enough for Ip to arrive. He just comes out of nowhere and starts whooping some ass. And I gotta say, it was great seeing them actually defend themselves. But I think that the film knew that they couldn't hold off these people that had clearly been doing these. Jin's group has been doing martial arts so much longer than all these people at the workers have been doing it for only a few months. It's not like they'd be able to hold them off for that long. So I'm glad once they got it took long enough for Ip Man ended up showing up, and I like how he kind of came in ex machina style. Let me see. Fight and stall them for Ip to arrive. He beats Jin by hitting his right ear with a wooden pole and deafening it. He literally knocks this guy right side up, and he's deaf. I mean, Ip can literally hit this guy with a haw or one of these or one of those, and the guy will lose his. He's gonna be like trying to get his ear to pop or something like that. It's like the dude is Dunskies. Ip warns Jin to stay away from the workers. Ip confronts Jan outside the mill for his participation in Jin's gang, tells him his brother Lin's fate. We do see. Sorry, Ip confronts Juan outside the mill for his participation in Jin's gang, and we see Ip holding it back on Juan several times. Juan's kind of an asshole, I gotta say. I'm not a big fan of Juan, especially what happened with his brother, and now he's holding up his kite. I do feel a little bit like these brothers probably should have been a little bit younger by them talking about like kites and stuff like that, and the way that they're kind of acting, and the way that Juan is kind of wishy-washy. Kind of feels like they should have been teenagers. They're a little bit old for what they should have been, but I still think they cast them probably because they can fight. And I thought his brother Lin was a good fighter when he was in it as well. He gives Jan the tin, which contained his folded up kite. Jan leaves Jin's gang and joins the workers in resisting the Japanese. Juan was mixed feelings about Juan. He's got a lot of making up to do. I know he's kind of more or less just supposed to be like the face of the crowd that we feel for when Ip's fighting, but still, he gets a little snotty there. The snot going all down. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, can someone help this kid? Like, I remember him when Ip gives him that kite, he's just like slobbering, gobbling all over the place. I'm like, oh god. All right, can we cut this? Cut. Yeah, editor, please. Need the editor. Okay, so one of the gang members informs the Japanese army about Ip. They soon raid the mill, and though Lee suggests him not going to the mill, Ip arrives there to save everyone. As Ip is being taken prisoner. Okay, so Ip arrives there to save everyone. I don't remember exactly what happens at this point. Wait, one of the gang members arrives and informs the Japanese army about Ip. They soon raid the mill, and though Lee suggests him not to go to the mill, Ip arrives there to save everyone. As Ip is being taken prisoner, he asks Chow to take his wife and son to Hong Kong for protection. When he tells Chow to do this, Chow takes this to like the super extreme. Chow, I don't believe Ip Man did not tell you to take his wife by force by tying them up and throwing him in like a grocery truck and taking them to Hong Kong. What the fuck? That was intense. I was like, Chow, come on now. Use your head, man. Like, God, I thought he was like a businessman, and you see him half the time. He's always like rubbing his hands and stuff like this in the beginning, like putting on some like lotion stuff at the beginning of the movies and of the movie. And at one point, I thought he was just like a very petite, chill dude. Like, did this guy just like bust up in Ip Man's place and kidnap his wife and son on Ip Man's behalf? I don't think that's what he meant. It is way intense. I was like, that was unnecessary, man. So, anyways, unless that was like part of the legitimate story, I might need to check that out. So, anyways, he asked Chow to take his wife and his son to Hong Kong for protection. General Myra tells Ip his life will be spared if he agrees to instruct the Japanese soldiers in Chinese martial arts. Ip refuses and challenges General Mirai to a match, which we saw coming. I just feel like we can kind of feel a slight predictability in the ways that Ip needs to fight. He needs to fight this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. It's like, all right, you can kind of see where it's going to go. So Ip refuses and challenges General Mirai to a match. Mirai accepts because of his love for martial arts and to avoid humiliating the Japanese people. Sato then requests Mirai to kill Ip, but Mirai refuses since it means accepting that he cannot win Ip fair and square. General Mirai then elaborates that by defeating Ip in a fair fight, he can crush the Chinese resistance spirit, which I feel is one of the major themes throughout probably the entire Ip Man series, if not a lot of Chinese cinema. The Chinese quote spirit is very strong throughout their cinema, I believe, and it's kind of weaved in there. I guess you can kind of equate it to like the freedom that is kind of weaved in, kind of falsely weaved in a little bit with American Western movies in a way. They kind of, claim all of that. I'm not saying that there's not Chinese resistance spirit, but what I'm saying is in the same vein of how we, kind of yell that at the top of our head, at the top of our, lungs. That's kind of what I'm feeling on this side, but not as so much in a derogatory sense for the Chinese at all. I don't mean that in any derogatory sense at all. I kind of do for the Western sense, because when we claim all of the bravery, the freedom, all of that, there's like so much subtext that goes with it too. So that's a whole nother subject. But anyways, unsatisfied with the superior decision, Sato secretly threatens Ip with death if he does not throw the match. So it's a lose-lose situation for Ip Man. If he wins, he's done. If he loses, Chinese resistance spirit, done. Crushed. Out of here. So, at first, the two fighters seem equally matched, and I've done enough for the whole podcast, so you understand how fucking crazy the shit is. The camera work, the choreography, the action, and all of the fights, especially this last one, are some of the best. My biggest problem with this last match was it seems like they're evenly matched, but Ip Man is almost OP. He should be Ope Man, overpowered. He is so overpowered and so fast, it's almost hard to believe anybody would have even be able to fight him at all. And with the action stunt work, you can see some of the times they're on like they're being pulled by strings or something like that, but it feels like the majority of the time they're doing a lot of their own martial arts and they're doing a lot of their own stunts. And so that's what the most impressive stuff is about it. The action is just you almost can't compare it to Western cinema at all, just because the Chinese does it best. Not the Chinese does it best. They probably do it of some of the best cinema when it comes to martial arts. I am extremely impressed when it comes to it. I am just blown away. I know Korean cinema, when it comes to their actions, intense too. So don't get me wrong when I say that Chinese is up there, but this is the most recent stuff I've seen recently, and I was just like blown the fuck away. So it seems like at first the two fighters seem equally matched. Ip eventually overwhelms General Mirai, inflicting a severe beating through an impeccable defense and relentless blows. So that was the coolest thing. I think that I've seen martial arts done with like Bruce Lee to a certain degree in Enter the Dragon, how I really felt some of the hits didn't always look like they were blowing when he was shooting, because it was hard to get it back in the day. I'll be honest, we didn't have the cameras were the size of fucking honkers. You couldn't move it fast enough. There was a whole different type of cinema back in the day, but he did it best for when you were doing it back in the 70s. So for what was this, 2008 or something like that, this was extremely impressive when it comes down to the action. And Ip Man hitting, like, he hits this guy just like 25 times, like 1 2 3 and then like whoosh, and then like before you, as the guy is still absorbing, like he's getting hit in the chest and the side and the ribs, the back, the neck, the and Ip Man, and before he even knows it, Judy chops him on his head. So it's like the pain is like a second late. It's like he can't feel the pain fast enough hitting him. And I swear there's at points where Ip Man's just like and he's like and I swear he just like knocks him out one time, or he hits him with a Judy chop or something like that, and he's like about to fall down, and then he grabs him again and hits him all again. He's like, oh, and so it's craziness, absolute craziness. So the Chinese crowd cheers for Ip, who sees his wife and child returning with Chow. Then, just probably escaped from Chow. Just then, Sato shoots Ip in the shoulder, causing him to fall to the ground. I fucking hate Sato. Get this guy out of here. This act incites the Chinese crowd, who quickly overwhelm the Japanese soldiers. During the scuffle, Lee kills Sato with latter's own gun. Ip is taken away by Chow and Wan amid the chaos. So I gotta say that I wonder if Sato actually did shoot Ip in this. I kind of want to see if there's anything we can find on like what's real, what's not, what's kind of exaggerated and stuff like that. I believe that they would probably shoot him. I'm surprised it wasn't more of a kill shot. I mean, it was pretty deadly. I guess if you're shot back in the day in the 30s, it's probably wouldn't be looking at living too long. Anyways, I'm not sure if that actually happened. I need to kind of do a little bit more research to see exactly what we found. But anyways, the cinematography in this movie is, very impressive, from the action with the choreography to the colors of it feeling kind of, dour and drained. You really felt like you were in that. To the action set pieces where they were actually fighting, I thought all of the different set pieces were interesting. I think it's always interesting to see how they are going to make this fight in this location more interesting than this another fight with another person in another location. It's entirely, the location matters so much, even when it comes down to the lighting, to the crowd. Is there a crowd there? There's so much about it that you have to listen for. There are several parts at the more dramatic parts of this movie where they don't have music playing, and it kind of feels a little bit weird, and it feels like the music's more given a beat towards the action and not so much the dramatic parts, which kind of makes it feel a little bit empty in certain scenes. But the pacing of this is so fast. Like I said, it's under 2 hours, so it keeps on going. That hour 40 mark, you want to hit around that is what you're really looking for. And so I love the scene of everybody kind of coming in on Ip Man at the end. And there's a lot of fades to black in this movie. There's several times where it feels like they just have the scene, fade to black, have a scene, fade to black. It's a lot of the beginning of the movie, but I just got to say that it's like they kind of feel like they slice of life, fade to black, slice of life, fade to black, slice of life, fade to black, kind of thing. The most important days of Ip Man's martial arts career with regards of fighting. So a closing on-screen text reveals that Ip survived and has escaped with his family to Hong Kong with Chow's help in 1949. There, Ip establishes Wing Chun School, where his students, including, this is the one I was going to mention, kind of spoiled a little bit early, but I had no idea the entire time I was watching this movie. One of his students was Bruce Lee. He came to learn martial arts from him. I was floored. I was like, what? I was like, what? This is the guy that taught Bruce Lee. I was like, this is insanity. I was like, it's the moment I was like, oh, I was floored not knowing that this was the master of Bruce Lee. I have always heard, Bruce Lee was kind of like the martial artist that, we all kind of looked up to from like a cinematic standpoint and understanding from, I don't remember if he was in television, but he's made such a cultural impact, at least in cinema, that, I had never known where he had learned anything from. So, his background was kind of, I had no idea. So seeing that he came from this guy and the fact that Ip Man was a real guy, it just makes it that much more badass. I was just like, that is insanity. I had a great time watching this first movie. Ip Man 1 is absolutely, definitely recommended. It's a straight 8 out of 10 for me, just from the action alone. If you aren't all about action, if you aren't all about the goods, and kung fu, if you don't like the first 15 minutes of the movie, then obviously you need to just hop on out. It's not for you. So that's why, honestly, if anybody was even listening to this, I don't know why you would even be this far and not know, unless you're just a LuckyDog podcast fan. You're trying to just listen to me hang out and be like, hey, but anyways, past all of these. Let me see. Okay, so Ip Man's final release. So wow, this had been an Ip Man's final Ip Man number 4. So they had done 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 2 was released in 2010. Number 3 was released in 2015. And number 4, says the finale, Ip Man for the finale, was released in 2019. Wow, that is that's pretty impressive. It's been going on 11 years at that point. I could definitely see some more of these happening, especially if Netflix sees value in more martial arts cinema, especially with this type of series. Let me see if I can get let me see if there's anything else we need to see. Okay, so although it's not mentioned in the film, Grandmaster Yip was actually employed as a police officer during the Japanese invasion. That's interesting that they kind of left that sideways. They giving him like a little bit of background like that might have I wonder if he was employed as a Chinese police officer or a Japanese police officer. I assume Japanese at that point because they were taken over. I assume that they were invaded by Japan, but I'm just guessing at that point. Let me know in the comment section if I'm wrong about that. As mentioned in the film, Ip Man's fighting style is Wing Chun. It is said to be created by 2 women. Wow, that is very cool. And I'm going to say their name wrong. Ning Mu and Yim Wing Chun. According to legend, a warlord came to marry Yim Wing Chun, but she refused and instead challenged him to a duel. She came across Ning Mu, a Buddhist nun whom she asked for help. Together they created the art of Wing Chun, which the nun named after Yim Wing Chun. Wing Chun won the fight. That is badass. Wow. So Bruce Lee's master, his master learned an art style that was created by 2 badass women. One of them, which was a Buddhist nun. That is so freaking cool. If that's true, that's the coolest thing I think I've ever read on IMDb. And of course, I am saying that's IMDb because you got to take that with a grain of salt. Like somebody could have just made that shit up and just be like, "Fuck it." But that is badass if that's legit. So Hiroki Ikichi, who played the Japanese general, suffered a mild concussion during filming after being struck 4 times during a fight scene. God. Ugh. Mild concussion? I wouldn't want any concussion on this. While rehearsing a fight scene, Donnie Yen reportedly injured when an axe wielder accidentally slashed the side of his left eye. Yen also had a masseur on set as he could not raise his right shoulder due to an injury. Damn, that I bet the insurance on the actors, like, remember, like Jackie Chan, maybe Jet Li, Donnie Yen, these crazy, I bet even like Bruce Lee probably back in the day, I bet they had crazy amounts of insurance if they're doing all of these their own stunts and stuff like that. That just sounds insanity, like, and painful, like thinking about having to. I know that the dramatic parts are, few and far between. I'd say it's much more physical than it is dramatic, but still, I was like, this is like, whoa, like, so I'd be sore as fuck every day, and then you had to go back and do it again. Ip's eldest son, Ip Chun, his student Lee A-young, and Chang Kwan, gold medalist, to Yu Hong served as technical consultants for the film, providing advice on the film's story and martial arts choreography. So they had like legit people behind the scenes that were like telling them how it's done. Although this is the first film centered around Yip Man, the idea of doing a Yip Man, is it Yip Man with a Y? Because I'm seeing some places say Yip with a Y, Yip Man, as a bit Ip Man. Everyone in the movie says Ip Man. I don't know why it says Yip right here. Ip Man, the idea of doing an Ip Man biopic had been conceived as long as 30 years. Donnie Yen actually was slated to play Ip Man in the supposed first biopic that was about to go into production in 1997. The film would have also featured Stephen Chow playing an adult Bruce Lee. However, only one day of shooting took place before the project was canceled. That is a totally different movie. It would have started Ip Man 10 years earlier, 11 years earlier, if they would have continued that. And I think that it would have been badass. It probably would have changed a lot of things as well. I think the name Ip Man is kind of off-putting away. Like, what is an Ip Man? What is that? And it's like, you got to see the martial arts and the fighting to really get involved in it. And so I honestly, I think this podcast is going to do really well with the people that have seen Ip Man, but I think the people that haven't seen Ip Man are going to like, what the heck is this? What is this? And if I didn't sell them well enough on the action at the beginning, then they're not going to be watching it, because I don't know if Ip Man is quote unquote a super attractive title, an understanding title to Western audiences and understanding what it is. But yeah, I'm really glad I watched it. Let's look at a couple more pieces of trivia. In this film, Ip Man's eldest son is portrayed as being 4 to 5 years old, but in reality, he was around 12 to 14 during 1935 and 37. I think that would have been a little bit more interesting. I wonder why they went with so young. If he was a little older, he would have been like, wow, my dad's a freaking badass, and he probably would have wanted to be more like his pops. The Japanese soldiers in the film wear modern U.S. military ribbons, okay? Let me see. Andy On was offered a major role in the film, but declined due to scheduling conflicts. I'm not sure who that is. At the end of the film, providing what happened subsequently to the fictional tournament, there are historical lies regarding the unconditional surrender of Japan in August 1945. China did not defeat or even have a unified government to fight against Japan. There wasn't just a war between communists and military, but warlords after the fall of Manchu's dynasty occupied different areas, making the invasion relatively fast. The historical debate to the unconditional surrender was a result of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Stalin declared the war or both. They unconditionally surrendered to the United States and England, since technically, despite declaration by Stalin The unconditional surrender was a day after. General MacArthur, who was the Eisenhower of the Pacific Theater, oversaw the 10-year reconstruction of Japan and was the first foreigner and individual to have the title of shogun bestowed upon him. The oppression of the Japanese was fairly accurate. Yeah, sorry, I thought that was going to be a little bit more towards the Ip Man's ending, but that was more about the political government and how that was happening. Throughout the course of the film, Ip Man was only struck twice during fights, but both of them during the final fight. He is struck 2 times more by Japanese soldiers at one point, but this happens when Ip Man is at gunpoint and has surrendered. Yeah, the dude is like untouchable at most of these points. Like, and he's barely has a sweat. Like, over half the people is fighting badass. He's like, I don't want to touch him. He would normally make a mockery out of the first people, and then everybody would be like, I don't want to fuck with him. So, anything else we got? Let's see. I think Donnie Yen is a skilled martial artist in various styles, including Wing Chun, which he learned from Ip Chun, the elder son of the real life Ip Man. So it just like keeps on going. I think this is so cool that all these people have passed on this legacy of learning this martial arts to a certain degree. It's just like badass. And I'm learning, I think that they were speaking Mandarin. The language they were speaking was Chinese, but the dialect was Cantonese. Sorry. And anything else? I think that's about all of we're gonna cover for the Ip Man review. We just passed an hour at this point, so hope everyone enjoyed the Ip Man review and enjoyed the movie as much as I did. If you didn't, hopefully enjoy the review as much as I enjoyed making it for you. Let me know how I can improve the podcast. Let me know what I can do to make the podcast easier for you to listen to. Like I said, if you wanted to listen to this early, patreon.com/LuckyDog podcast. If you cannot financially support or help the podcast, it's totally okay. It's only if you can. You can also do 5 stars on Apple, iTunes. What do you got? Thumbs up on the YouTubes. You got to follow, subscribe on Twitch, do all the things. Follow on SoundCloud. You'll get it all mastered and early and all that good stuff. You'll want to watch and see my face. Then I'm on YouTube as well. So be sure to check all the social medias out. Like I said, thank you for listening and watching. LuckyDog Podcast. Could not do this podcast without you. On that note, take it easy.